December 24, 1971. Above the Peruvian Amazon rainforest. At 17 years old, Juliane Koepcke had no idea that fastening her seatbelt would separate her from every other human being on that plane. LANSA Flight 508 was delayed. Storm clouds crowded the sky. Passengers were anxious but hopeful. It was Christmas Eve. Juliane sat beside her mother, staring out the window, watching the clouds turn darker, thicker, almost alive. Then the turbulence began. Not the kind that makes people nervous, the kind that makes them pray silently. The aircraft jolted violently. Overhead compartments burst open. People screamed. And then lightning. A blinding white flash tore through the cabin. Witnesses would later say the plane didn't crash, it came apart. At 3,000 meters above the jungle, the aircraft disintegrated in mid-air. Juliane never heard the impact, because there wasn't one. She was ripped from the sky, still strapped to her seat, spinning, falling, surrounded by silence and green emptiness. No screams, no engine noise, just the wind and an impossible calm. She would later say it felt as if something was holding her, guiding her descent through the trees, breaking her fall branch by branch. Then blackness. When Juliane opened her eyes, it was December 25th. She was lying on the jungle floor, alive. Her collarbone was broken, her arm was badly injured, one eye swollen shut. Ants crawled across her skin. Rain soaked her clothes. She called for her mother. No answer. She screamed. Only the jungle responded. Around her, there were no bodies, no plane wreckage, no signs of civilization, just endless rainforest, dense, loud, merciless. That's when reality settled in. She had survived a fall no human should survive, and she was completely alone. As panic rose in her chest, something unexpected happened. Not a voice, not a vision, but a deep, quiet certainty inside her. If you stay still, you die. Juliane forced herself to stand. She didn't know it yet, but the jungle had already decided to test her faith in life itself.
December 25, 1971. Somewhere deep inside the Peruvian Amazon, Juliane Koepcke took her first step and nearly collapsed. Pain shot through her body. Her broken collarbone burned. Her arm hung useless. But the fear was worse, because the jungle was alive. Insects screamed, birds shrieked warnings, leaves shifted in ways that felt intentional, as if something unseen was watching. Juliane had one thought repeating in her mind: water, find water. She didn't know why she was certain, she just was. She began walking in one direction, following a narrow line in the vegetation, a small stream. Her parents were scientists. They had taught her one rule about the rainforest: streams lead to rivers, rivers lead to people. So she followed the water. Hours passed, or maybe days. Time dissolved. She drank from the stream, ignoring the pain in her stomach. She hadn't eaten since before the flight. Every step felt like a gamble between survival and collapse. At night, the jungle changed. The darkness wasn't empty, it was crowded. Eyes reflected in the distance. Branches snapped without warning. Juliane sat against a tree, unable to lie down because of the pain, staring into the black. That's when the fear peaked. She cried, not loud, quietly, for her mother, for herself, for the certainty that no one was coming. Then something strange happened. The fear faded, not suddenly, gently. A calm settled over her, unnatural, almost protective. She later said it felt like being watched over, not by something threatening, but something patient. The jungle didn't feel like an enemy in that moment. It felt like a test. The next morning, she woke to sunlight filtering through the leaves. She was still alive. Her wounds were infected. Maggots began forming inside a cut on her arm. The smell was unbearable. She wanted to give up, but again, that same quiet certainty returned. Keep moving. So she did. She walked, she stumbled, she fell. And each time she stood back up, it felt less like choice and more like she was being carried by something she couldn't see. Juliane didn't know it yet, but the jungle was not done with her.
December 28, 1971. Still lost in the Amazon rainforest, Peru. By the third day, Juliane Koepcke's body was beginning to fail. Her wounds were no longer just painful, they were alive. The maggots had multiplied inside the open gash on her arm. Every movement sent waves of nausea through her. She tried to ignore it. She couldn't afford fear anymore. The jungle didn't slow down for suffering. Her footsteps became unsteady, her vision blurred. At times, she thought she heard voices, her mother calling her name. She would stop, heart racing, then realize it was only the wind twisting through the trees, or maybe not only the wind. Juliane started talking out loud, not to God, not to spirits, to herself. She narrated every step, every decision, as if keeping her mind anchored to reality was the only way not to disappear. Then she found it, a wider river, brown, slow-moving, endless. She cried, because rivers meant people, but they also meant crocodiles. Juliane waded in anyway, letting the current carry her when she no longer had the strength to walk. At night, she slept on muddy riverbanks, half awake, afraid to close her eyes. That's when the dreams began. Not nightmares, memories. Her parents teaching her about the forest, how to read signs, how to survive. But something felt different. These memories felt too clear, too precise, as if they were being placed in her mind exactly when she needed them. On the fifth day, she reached what looked like a small campsite, an abandoned wooden shelter, empty but real. Juliane collapsed inside it and cried, not from happiness, but from exhaustion so deep it felt like dying slowly. The infection had worsened. Her arm throbbed violently. She knew the truth now. If nothing changed soon, she would die there. As darkness fell, Juliane whispered something she had never said out loud before. "I don't want to die here." Not a prayer, a plea. And for the first time since the crash, the jungle answered.
December 30th, 1971. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon, Juliane Koepcke woke up convinced something had changed. Nothing around her looked different. The jungle was still dense. The river still flowed endlessly. But she felt it. A shift. Her arm was burning. The infection had spread dangerously. The maggots were still there, moving beneath her skin. She remembered something her father once said during a field expedition. If you ever find larvae in a wound, fuel can kill them. The memory surfaced suddenly, clearly, too clearly. Juliane searched the abandoned camp and found it, a small container of gasoline left behind by loggers. Her hands trembled. She poured it into the wound. The pain was unbearable. She screamed until her voice broke. The larva surfaced and died. Juliane passed out. When she woke up, hours had passed. She was alive, weak but alive. She stood and followed the river again, walking now with a strange determination, as if every step had been quietly approved by something unseen. Then she heard it. Voices, real ones.
Men. She stumbled forward, collapsed into the open, and lost consciousness. When Juliane woke up again, she was not alone. 3 local fishermen stood over her, shocked. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. A teenage girl, alone, injured, emerging from the jungle after 10 days. When she told them she had fallen from the sky, they thought she was hallucinating, but they helped her anyway. They fed her, carried her, treated her wounds as best they could. For the first time since December 24th, Juliane slept without fear. As the boat moved downriver, she stared at the trees and felt something unexpected. Gratitude. Not just for survival, but for the mercy she had been shown, by people, by memory, by something she still couldn't name. She had entered the jungle as a child. She was leaving it, changed. January 3rd, 1972. A hospital room in Pucallpa, Peru. Juliane Koepcke opened her eyes to white walls and silence. Real silence. No insects, no rain, no fear hiding in the dark. Doctors stood frozen when they realized who she was. Search teams had already declared her dead. She was the only survivor of Lanson 508. Out of 92 people, Juliane lived. Not because she was stronger, not because she was faster, but because she kept moving when everything said to stop. As her injuries healed, the truth emerged. Her mother had been alive after the crash, calling for her in the jungle, but succumbed to her injuries days later. The knowledge shattered Juliane. Survival came with guilt, with questions, with silence, but also with something else: clarity. Juliane never spoke of her experience as a miracle in loud words. She described it differently, as a series of small mercies: a seatbelt that held, trees that slowed her fall, a memory recalled at the exact moment it was needed, strangers who chose compassion without hesitation. Years later, Juliane returned to the crash site, not to relive the trauma, but to understand it. She became a biologist like her parents, not driven by fear of death, but by respect for life. She studied the rainforest that once nearly killed her and then saved her. Juliane learned that survival isn't always about escaping death. Sometimes it's about being transformed by it. She carried the jungle with her, not as a nightmare, but as a reminder that even in absolute isolation, mercy can find you, that love can appear through strangers, that life, when it chooses to stay, does so quietly. Juliane Koepcke didn't just fall from the sky. She walked back from the edge of death, and she never stopped listening to that calm voice inside her, the one that whispered on the forest floor, "Keep moving."